This is All Talk Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon. This is 1680 The Crow. I'm Ryan Bailey, and these are your 12 o'clock headlines. BC Premier David Eby came out with another new housing announcement today that was focused on property development. Reporter Riley Lyons has more.
The Premier stated today that the province was aiming to make the approval process for land development more streamlined. The goal of this is to make it cheaper for land developers to build, thus making housing more affordable in BC. Eby, alongside Linda Buchanan, the mayor of North Vancouver, said that this is also dependent on municipal policy.
First of all, you need a council that's supportive and sort of gives that direction around streamlining it, and then you need to make sure you have the capacity within your staff. So
Buchanan stated these were the two things needed for municipalities to adopt Eby's new policies. Eby also stated that the average time for approvals is 2 years, a time frame that he's looking to cut down on. Riley Lyons, 1680 The Crow.
We are now joined live by reporter Riley Lyons. Riley, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So, Riley, how does Eby's new streamlined process make housing more affordable?
So David Eby's plan here is that land developers in BC find it too expensive to build properties. His plan is basically to cut back on time and money that building developers need to get approved for their projects. And with this financial flexibility, he intends to make it so that they can charge less to everyday people who are looking for housing.
And just how long will it take developers to get approved after Eby's policy goes into effect?
So David Eby wasn't releasing any exact figures on goals about how long it's going to take for land developers to get approved. He did mention that the average is 2 years right now, and he just mentioned that they're planning on cutting back on that, but there are no dates that are being set at the moment, at least not at this time.
Thank you, Riley.
Thanks, Ryan.
Vancouver City Councillors are set to consider a draft report that is targeting the revitalization of the historic Chinatown neighborhood. A staff report that will be presented to Council on Tuesday calls for approval of the Uplifting Chinatown Action Plan and recommends councillors add necessary funding to the draft 2023 budget to meet the program's needs. This plan comes from a council resolution that was passed in November that would help clean up Chinatown streets, alleyways, and sidewalks, remove litter, needles, and address graffiti and vandalism. The costs for this program are estimated to be around $2.1 million this year. The recommendation says funds should be reallocated from money designated from other projects or by adding a further 0.2% increase to a proposed 5% property tax hike. Hospitals are being threatened with another wave of COVID-19 due to the emergence of a highly transmissible subvariant. With more on the story, here's Evan Smith.
The COVID-19 variant named Kraken is now confirmed to account for 24 cases in the province. XBB 1.5 is a subvariant of Omicron, the strain which was a large cause for concern in BC throughout parts of 2022. The BC government recently announced the reactivation of emergency operations centers. These measures allow increased patient flow so that patients who require critical care are able to get the treatment they need. Michelle Montgomery, a patient care coordinator, spoke on the importance of supporting hospitals.
Kraken, if it does come to that degree, we also have our other flus out there right now as well. So that's all putting pressure on the healthcare system.
At this point, the BC government is not considering the reintroduction of public health measures, such as indoor mask mandates or shortened wait times between vaccine boosters. Evan Smith, 1680, The Crow.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Saskatoon this morning to tour the Vital Metals Rare Earth Element Processing Plant as part of a 3-day tour to see Canada's battery supply chain. Canada has not been a commercial producer of rare earth elements, but does have some of the largest known deposits on the planet. The Prime Minister says Canada has the materials that are necessary for manufacturing, but reaffirms the importance of clean materials and respect for Indigenous communities. According to Trudeau, there has been an increased demand for Canada to be a reliable source of these materials and that the province of Saskatchewan is in a strong position to produce this. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says he is disappointed that he was not told of this visit ahead of time, as the provincial government has been advocating for investment in this area. The Bank of Canada says more businesses than usual are anticipating a decline in sales as firms and consumers expect an economic recession in the next 12 months. Reporter Najoud Al-Maliz has more.
The central bank released its fourth quarter business outlook and consumer expectation surveys today, giving some insight into how inflation and interest rates are affecting Canadian consumers and businesses. More businesses are reporting demand and credit as pressing concerns, while consumers are cutting back on spending amid rising prices. Despite concerns about weakening demand, almost half of businesses said they're planning to add employees or to fill vacant positions over the next 12 months. The surveys also showed both businesses and consumers expect inflation to remain elevated in the short term, but expected to ease in 5 years to close to the central bank's target of 2%. Najoud Al-Maliz, The Canadian Press, Ottawa.
The Yukon Territory is lifting its COVID-19 public health emergency declaration almost 3 years after it was put in place. In a statement, the Yukon government says it has accepted the recommendation of its chief medical officer, and the decision is, quote, another step the Yukon is taking to manage COVID-19 in a more sustainable way. Minister of Health and Social Services Tracy Ann McPhee says the change will mean managing COVID-19 like other communicable diseases, but the virus remains a public health emergency that officials will closely monitor. 2 men have been arrested by police in India in relation to an investigation over the deaths of a family who froze a year ago while attempting to cross from Manitoba into the United States. The men were arrested on Sunday, but others remained wanted in Canada and the U.S. According to the RCMP, the family was trying to cross the border during severe weather conditions and died from the exposure. A freight train derailed in Saskatchewan late Sunday night. According to the Transportation Safety Board, 47 cars holding 95 containers derailed near the village of Chaplin, which is located 150 kilometers west of Regina. A spokesman with Canadian Pacific Railway says there were no dangerous goods on board and no injuries have been reported. Canadian Pacific crews are at the scene and the safety board will be investigating the derailment today. The World Economic Forum returns to its first in-person winter meetup since 2020 in Davos, Switzerland. Charles de Ledesma reports.
Leaders are seeking to bridge political divisions in a divided world, buttress a hobbling economy, and address concerns about climate change, among many other things. Nearly 600 CEOs and more than 50 heads of state or government are expected, but it's never clear how much concrete action emerges from the elite event. Missing are leaders like President Joe Biden, Chinese President Xi Jinping, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and French President Emmanuel Macron. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Billionaire Elon Musk is going to court for a trial regarding tweets he made about his company Tesla. ABC's Sherry Preston has the details.
Jury selection begins Tuesday in the class action lawsuit of Elon Musk versus investors who owned Tesla stock during a 10-day period in August of 2018. Before he owned Twitter, Musk had tweeted he had lined up the financing to pay for a $72 billion buyout of the electric vehicle company. He then tweeted again that made the deal seem imminent, only it wasn't. The whole thing led to a $40 million settlement with the SEC that also required Musk to step down as CEO. He now says he entered that settlement under duress and that he thought he would be able to line up the financing. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
Taking a look at today's weather, it is currently 7 degrees with showers coming down at the BCIT Broadcast Center in Burnaby. High today for Metro Vancouver sits at 7 with showers continuing into the evening. Overnight low will drop to 5 degrees with a break in the rain overnight. Showers will start up again tomorrow morning and continue until Wednesday.
extremely important for people to stay healthy. And
everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Welcome back. We'll take a look now at our sports headlines, starting with the NBA. The league is honoring Martin Luther King Jr. with MLK Day. 9 games are slated for the day, with off-court activities promoting equality and social justice also going on. Among the games today, the Toronto Raptors have just tipped off against the New York Knicks, and the Los Angeles Lakers will play the Houston Rockets at 7:30 tonight. This off the back of LeBron James becoming the second player in NBA history to score 38,000 career points last night. At the Australian Open Tennis Championship, Rafael Nadal won his match but struggled during the first day of play. Graham Agars has more.
Men's defending champion Rafael Nadal was lucky to survive the first day of the Australian Open, the top seed struggling against the big serving Jack Draper before winning 6-1 in the fourth set of a 3-hour and 41-minute battle. The Spaniard helped when the Englishman started cramping late in the match. Francis Tiafoe, Sebastian Korda, Jessica Pegula and last year's finalist Danielle Collins led the American charge on day one, with all but Pegula needing extra sets before advancing. I'm Graham Agars.
The Ottawa Red Blacks have extended quarterback Jeremiah Masoli, whose new deal keeps him around until 2024. Masoli has played 1 season as a Red Black. It appeared in 4 games last year with a 66.7% completion rate, totaling 1,083 yards and 2 touchdowns before a knee injury cut his season short in Week 5. Canadian soccer player Jonathan David scored his 40th goal with French club Lille in a 5-1 victory over Troyes. The Ottawa-born striker scored twice against Troyes and became the first foreign player to reach the milestone in France's Ligue 1. David sits at 12 goals now on the season and is tied for second in the race for France's Golden Boot Award. His success has brought him into conversations about moving to a bigger club. NCAA basketball player Darius Miles and another man have been charged with capital murder in connection with the fatal shooting of a 23-year-old woman early Sunday near the University of Alabama. Here's reporter Derek Dennis.
Alabama Athletics releasing a statement saying, "We were made aware of the recent charge against student-athlete Darius Miles, and he is no longer a member of the Alabama men's basketball team." The university also releasing a statement that read, "We are grieved by the incident that occurred near campus and extend our deepest condolences to the victim's family and friends." Miles played in 53 games during the last 3 seasons with the Crimson Tide, but was benched recently because of an ankle injury.
The NHL announced its 3 Stars of the Week winners, with Martin Jones, Lucas Raymond, and Nikita Kucherov receiving the honor. Seattle goaltender Martin Jones went 3-0 with a 1.67 goals against average, .933 save percentage, and 2 shutouts as a part of the Kraken's win streak. The Kraken also became the first team in NHL history to sweep a road trip of 7 games or more. Detroit Red Wings winger Lucas Raymond and Tampa Bay Lightning forward Nikita Kucherov each netted themselves 3 goals and 4 assists last week. That'll do it for your sports and news headlines at 12 o'clock. From the BCIT Broadcast Center in Burnaby, I'm Ryan Bailey.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Now it's time for the comment.
It's now time for Friday's edition of The Comment. Today's comment is on the current state of the Vancouver Canucks. I believe this is the worst team in Canucks history. Now, statistically speaking, this isn't the case, but when you consider the players that they have and the expectations that they haven't met, combined with the downright hilarious ways that they have found ways to lose this year, this for me is their worst season by far. Already through 40 games this season, the Canucks have blown 8 different multi-goal leads. On 3 different occasions this season, they have blown a 3-goal lead by the end of regulation. Let that sink in. This team is accidentally bad, which is the worst thing to be in sports. For reference, the 2015 Buffalo Sabres iced one of the worst teams in league history, going 23, 51, and 8. However, they did that because they wanted Connor McDavid. This team had delusions of grandeur, and for that, they are the worst team in Canucks history. I'm Mac Fleet, and that was my comment.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Crow Chronicles. I'm Abby.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Sebastian.
So this past weekend we went to the Vancouver Aquarium. I've only actually been there once before, and it was like way before COVID when they still had beluga whales and stuff. They don't have whales anymore, which is good or bad, whatever you think. But they have a stellar sea lion instead, which is cool.
It was my first time too. I love watching the jellyfish tank. That was really hypnotic to watch.
I also really enjoyed seeing the jellyfish and watching the sea lion show as well.
Did you guys know that the Vancouver Aquarium first opened back in 1956?
Yeah, so today we're talking about that moment in BC history, the opening of the Vancouver Aquarium.
Oh, yeah. So the way the aquarium got started, so talking about the 1950s, right? World War II was over. There's this kind of optimism in the U.S. and Canada. And a Vancouver insurance man, so he was a businessman, not a biologist, kept tropical saltwater fish at home as a hobby. Well, that was very hard to do in the 1950s, because you couldn't go out, if you were tropical saltwater fish, you had to have somebody had to go collect them in Fiji or Tonga or Australia and ship them to you. He believed that Vancouver, as a growing metropolis, needed an aquarium, because all the great cities had one: Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, and Vancouver didn't have an aquarium. So he said, well, Vancouver needs an aquarium. So he led a community movement to get an aquarium established. And that the trick to getting the aquarium established was that he convinced all 3 levels of government to put up $100,000 each if the other level of government would put up $100,000. And he was a very politically astute guy. And so he started with the premier of BC, and the premier said, sure, I'll do it, because the feds are never going to do it. And then he got the mayor of Vancouver to say, who said the same thing. The feds will never do it, but he already knew that the feds would do it, and so the aquarium was built with that $300,000 and a lot of community support, and it opened on June 15th, 1956.
So that was John Nightingale, the second director of the Vancouver Aquarium who we spoke to. We learned that the Vancouver Aquarium is the oldest and the first public aquarium that opened in Canada, and it has become one of the 5 largest aquariums in North America.
It's huge, and it's located in one of the most iconic spots in Vancouver.
Yeah, did you know that Stanley Park wasn't actually the only location considered for the aquarium?
So Mayor Hume, who was the Vancouver mayor of the day, decided that's where it was going to be. That's not where anybody wanted it. The park board didn't want it there. Some of the city councilors didn't want it there. The aquarium didn't really want it there. But the mayor said that's where it's going. Because there used to be a zoo, a free zoo in Stanley Park, occupying the area up from what's now the train that runs at Christmas time and at Halloween down to the aquarium. There were zoo exhibits scattered around that landscape. And so the zoo was already there. So Mayor Hume said, well, this is kind of like a fishy piece of the zoo, put it in Stanley Park. He made the decision personally. Some people wanted it to go down by somewhere near where the Vancouver Museum is. And back then, False Creek, of course, was lumber mills. It was industrial. And somebody thought right at the end of right next to where the aquatic center is, sort of between the Burrard and would be just east of the Burrard Bridge.
The Vancouver Public Aquarium Association from UBC, founded in 1950, also had a role in the opening of the aquarium. We talked to Andrew Tribe, a marine mammal research unit professor at UBC, who shared the experience of one of the members of the association at the time.
They started it from thinking about needing access to do research where they could have saltwater tanks, a place to care for things. And I think that was combined. So I think certainly the research community from UBC was very central to that, but also with someone like Murray Newman, who also had his eye on the public and the need for public education. And I think it was a good combination. I think that probably also helped to steer the direction so that over the years that research was always one of the pillars of what they did. And animals were not there for one's entertainment, but to educate.
Oh, I had no idea about any of that. I wonder what the implications of the aquarium's opening had on tourism in Vancouver at the time.
That's a great question, Abby. It was definitely very busy when we visited over the weekend. John Nightingale said when the aquarium first opened, it was only the size of the tropics room, which is only a 9,000 square foot facility. I can't imagine the crowd when 10,000 people showed up for the opening weekend.
Well, it was highly anticipated, the opening. In fact, I have a good friend who's now in his 80s, who was a child standing holding his mother's hand in that opening day lineup to get into the aquarium. They had 10,000 people on the first day went through the aquarium. It was a lot smaller than it is today. So it was right from the get-go, it was very publicly popular and helped put Vancouver on the map in a number of different ways.
When we went last Saturday, the place was packed with families. You could hear kids all by the different animals, especially during the Sea Lion show. We were really impressed by that too. The show wasn't only about tricks and jumps, it was also very educational. The hosts talk about the relationship that trainers and animals have and how important it is for making sure the animals are healthy.
Yeah, I really loved how centered the Vancouver Aquarium is around education. Besides the Sea Lion show, there were also many other opportunities to learn about marine life through displays and murals and pictures and interactive screens. It really seems as though this has been the aquarium's top priority since the beginning.
You don't need to be a diver to observe marine life, that they've recreated different habitats, different parts of the ocean, and you can see firsthand what's there. And so I think that's been a very important part. It's allowed people to see marine mammals up close and to learn about them in different ways. They were the first to bring a killer whale into captivity, and as a result, changed the world's attitudes and perception, understandings about killer whales, because people got to see them up close. Before that, everybody was terrified of them, and there were efforts even to remove them and to kill them because people were afraid of them. And now they are the mascots or heroes of the marine life here. So they played a role in changing public perceptions. And I think, the public, we tend to love and care for things that we know or that we've seen, and to be told that we should care about fish that we've never seen and can't relate to, or let's say a killer whale that we can't relate to, it's very difficult. But once people get to know them, and I think the aquarium provides a means to get to know marine life in a way that one cannot do by walking along a beach or looking out over the ocean.
I like that the Vancouver Aquarium tries to teach you when you visit instead of being like an amusement park. It also feels like other public aquariums across the province that opened up afterwards took inspiration from the Vancouver Aquarium too.
Toronto has Ripley's, whatever, believe it or not, and they've got something, and that was much later when that opened up. And then, then there's in Marineland, or is it what do they call it? Marineland, isn't it, in Niagara Falls, which I've never seen, but that one opened up. And I guess, when I think of these other two, I guess I've seen them being more as set up as a tourist destination. And I think one thing that the Vancouver Aquarium stood out for was, yes, it recognized that tourists would come, but it seemed to be designed to be part of the community and to be a community aquarium and to provide information, promote conservation of marine life, and show what we don't see under the surface. So I think that its approach wasn't private in the sense of making money. I think a big part of its mandate was education, promoting conservation, and ultimately supporting research as well. There are now some other community-based aquariums in British Columbia. So there's one in Ucluelet. They've got a small one up in Campbell River, and I know there's one in Seashelt as well, or Gibson's, I guess is where it is. And they're very, very cool because they're very small and it's very community-based. But they're very neat.
After visiting the aquarium, I definitely realized that it's a really important place for education on marine life, on top of being a fun place to see all the fish and mammals up close. And I think this is especially important for BC because we're surrounded by water and marine life in nature. So as we spoke to John Nightingale, he also shared how the aquarium impacted him personally.
Academic training was as a scientist and happened to be with salmon, and part of that training in graduate school involved a lot of talking to the public and to school kids, and I came to understand that people are really interested in the oceans and nature, but a lot of people just don't have a pathway or they don't have the access. And so aquariums seem to me to be a pretty perfect way to engage ordinary people who just have an interest but don't have any background or any technical knowledge. So I've pretty much spent my whole career working in and out of aquariums and museums a little bit. And so I came to Vancouver on purpose when the original director announced his retirement. The aquarium at that point was 37 years old. He announced his retirement, so he'd been the director for a long time. That's a long time to hold the job. And so I came to Vancouver on purpose because of the Vancouver Aquarium. So it was a very significant part of my life, and it's a very significant part of what I believe we should be doing to combat climate change and loss of biodiversity and other things.
I really enjoy learning about the history of the aquarium. It gave me a new perspective on the role these places have when it comes to teaching to new generations about how crucial it is to taking care of animals that you have in front of you. And I think it's also crucial for researchers like Andrew and the Marine Mammal Research Institute team.
I can talk from my side, where we've done a lot of research with primarily sea lions and northern fur seals and also harbor seals. And so it's been a collaborative effort where we have the ideas for what the research is, but then we need to have animal trainers that can help get the animals to do what's needed to do the research, because we can't collect any data from a sea lion that it doesn't want to do willingly. We can't force it. They're just too big, too strong. And plus, if you do force an animal, you're just going to stress it out, and then your data won't be of any use. So we have to be able to collect data in a way that the animal cooperates 100%, is completely relaxed. And that's where the trainers ensure that those are the conditions under which the animals participate. So at the same time, the aquarium doesn't have the expertise to do the research themselves, but we've got graduate students here, undergraduate students, and just such a depth of knowledge to run those sorts of things. So the university doesn't have the facilities to care for these animals, and so it worked out very well. And then the third aspect in here was the fact that the public got to hear about the research. They would understand why the animals were there, what we're learning from them, and what they're teaching us, and what we're taking back to the field to help conserve marine mammals in the wild.
What I learned was that the salmon plushies at the gift shop are only $20. I mean, that's such a steal. $20 for a salmon plushie? Come on. No, but really, what I learned was how lucky I was to grow up on the West Coast, where I saw a lot of those animals in the wild naturally, like, all the time. I also learned more about how the aquarium came to be and the 3 levels of government the original director, Murray Newman, had to go through to open it. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of The Crow Chronicles.
Be sure to follow BCIT Journalism on Twitter and BCIT News on Instagram.
I'm Abby.
I'm Caitlin.
I'm Sebastian.
Bye!